Evening, folks. How you all doing? Few changes this week. I actually got a new laptop. You can enjoy me now in a bit of higher definition with a new camera. So lucky you lot. And I've changed into the room next to my office, the Koi Talk podcast studio, because I don't want to repeat that sun in my eye from last week. That was a pain in the arse. I looked an absolute wally. So enough of all that. So I think there's plenty happening in a minute. We've seen a massive change in temperatures this past week, especially. I felt it 5:30 this morning up at Koi Wholesale packing fish. When I went in, my t-shirt was not the best of ideas because it was a bit nippy to say the least. So I have got a Koi appreciation lined up this week. I've been digging through my archives, found a really nice Kajaku that I want to share with you all. So I think you might enjoy that one. I'm just trying to get a bit of a different variety on it. Really looking forward. I don't know the show much or I've got coming up, but I've got James Colley coming over from the Great British Koi Show on Friday for a meeting. Already getting stuck into planning for next year. So really, I'm still super enthused by all that, and some of the ideas we've got banding around are pretty cool for next year. But I think it's really important because it's a show for all you guys. You know, some feedback. What would you guys like to see when you're visiting a show? What do you feel, as good as it was? What do you feel it's missing? What would you like to see? What would you like to see change? Any feedback, please fire it into the comments so we can have a look. And there's certainly stuff that we can have me and James can add to our discussions on Friday. But if some of this stuff comes off for next year, I think you're going to be really blown away. Got some great stuff to come. So Chris is going to join us this evening as well. So he's up here. Go and get stuck in. Working through a load of your questions. If you've got new questions you want to pop in, please get firing them into the comments. Two last things, please hit the like button, hit share, so we can get this to reach as many people as possible. And here's one for you guys as well. If you've got some Koi talk, you can see them in the background. If you've got some issues you want to catch up on, details below. We're running 25% off until the end of the month on all the back issues. So you can head on over to koitalk.com and fill up your collection. And also on Koi Talk stuff, we have got the binders. They are in progress. It's been quite a fascinating journey figuring these ones out. Believe it or not, there's not many people that make them. I've had some samples and a load of them's been absolute shite, to be honest. So finally found one we're dead happy with. We can get everything done, and we're just currently working on the design because, it's got to look right on it, folks. Let's face it, with all the effort we've gone to with the magazine, you want something a little bit more awesome if we can to keep them all in. So bear with us. We'll keep you posted on that. We're working on some other merchandise and bits and bobs as well as ever. We never stop, so we'll keep it going. So there we are. Let's bring Chris in and we'll start firing through some questions and bits and bobs. How are you doing, Chris?
Not too bad, buddy. Yourself?
Yeah, you've got the joys of the Koi Wholesale internet connection, I can see.
Yeah, the hamsters are going full steam, mate.
I know this morning I was running around like an headless chicken trying to get them fish packed, and just as I started processing paperwork, it was on off. It was driving me insane.
Yeah, I've had that this morning, mate. Yeah.
Legendary.
What are talking about today, then, mate?
I'm just going to have a look. I just think we've just seen a few bits coming through, to be honest, mate. So let's start with them first, then we'll dive back. So my Koi journey. Hi, Ricky. It's now September and my pond is sitting at 18 degrees. I'm coming off grow food and moving over to NT Labs wheat German garlic until April, May when the temperatures reach 20. Do you think that's okay? Certainly nothing wrong with it. It's going to work. It's going to do the job. I think maybe 18, you're at the temperature bands we're talking about. I think we'd possibly say probably a bit too early for wheat germ. In my opinion, there's still a time where you can get a bit of decent conditioning on fish at 18. Not so much growth. I'm not too familiar what other food ranges I could tie it to. If we was talking sake Akari, it'd be a great time for sake balance now, sort of in its prime at that, and really keep them going until the temperatures really drop off. So yeah, nothing wrong with it. I'd probably look at just if there is an alternative food in whatever you're using, probably look at that until the wheat germ, and just look at the wheat germ when it gets super cold and feed in sparse and bare minimum anyway. So, to add to that, Chris?
Yeah, pretty much echo what you said there. May as well take advantage of this, the good weather. I mean, I don't see any reason why the pond's temperatures aren't going to sit at around 18 for another few weeks. So, yeah, if you're not heating over winter, then take advantage of this natural temperature. And yeah, and I probably agree, a bit too early to move on to wheat germ personally. So, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully that answers that one for you. So we'll get that one away. Let's have a look what we've got. Oh, here we go. I forget Steve tidies them all up into a folder for us to get to. Right. Actually, this was one that I had. We still got a private email. My boy's Koi Liverpool. I took a screenshot of it on my phone to work through. But Ricky, could you explain your homemade shower setup? I'm looking.
Oh, sorry guys, something's going on here. Not sure if you could. Hey guys, I think it's just me, so bear with me. I think Ricky's having some technical issues, which is a bit embarrassing. Hopefully we can get him back on board shortly. I mean, Ricky, could you explain your homemade shower setup? I am looking to replicate it on my 6 new vats. What media do you use to clean, and the cleaning regime? So I'm fairly familiar with the systems that Ricky runs here. It's certainly, we don't shy away from the fact that there's no bells and whistles on some of the systems here at Koi Wholesale. I mean, I think when I was speaking to Ricky's dad, Andy, about the cost of setting them up, they're really not a costly exercise. It's a case of finding some preformed plastic vats that you can purchase online, and yeah, I think they were in the region of about £15 to £20 to get a good solid unit. And then it's just a case of buying some tank connectors. It's a 3-tiered sort of box shower system, if you will, and in the top it's very basic, just a coarse layer of sponge just to take some of the solids off, and then some shower media. I think there's a combination of BHM and some of the infrareds. I believe that's how you pronounce it. And a spray bar. Some of the smaller ones, they only run off sort of, I think the smallest ones run off about 5,500 litres an hour, so not crazy flow rates. They travel down through the media, and then there's 2.5 inch returns at the base. So yeah, it's really not too. Oh, here he is.
It's 2 weeks on bounce now. This is shocking.
You're lucky I'm such a pro, mate, because yeah,
I was only just bragging about the speed of the internet, weren't I?
Yeah,
connected up, I fixed the problems. 200 meg download speed, but it's clearly not stable. Brilliant.
I've just been boring everyone, so yeah, I sort of took over there, Rick, and just explained that, you know,
go for it.
The shower systems at Koi Wholesale, you know, never really hid behind the fact that they are quite basic and achievable. Obviously, speaking to your dad over the years, like the cost of them is quite attainable for most. I mean, probably the most expensive
Really
part
is.
is the media inside.
Really
So correct me if I'm wrong, but the concept is essentially pump-fed shower up on an 1.5-inch pipe into a spray bar, three boxes of media with a coarse sponge on the top layer, trickle down, fills the base up, and then 2.5-inch returns. There's really not too much more, unless I'm missing something.
And then we've got pumice for the main media, which is I think pretty much one of the most cost-effective you can get.
And is it
brilliant?
Is it? Have you got? Am I right? I think I've seen a few of those infrared boxes around somewhere.
They're in the big showers.
In the big showers, okay. Oh, there you go, guys.
That's in the big showers, that stuff.
Yeah,
the pumice, and they've served. I mean, them tanks have performed an absolute dream. 400-gallon tanks that have often had kind of 350 to 400 fish in them. Over quarantine periods, and I mean, not fed the heaviest, but fed. No. So it's they perform so well. Just 4,000 litre pump on them made the tank turning over about once an hour.
Yeah,
it's really worked a treat. So I hope that helps. Like I said, they are dead basic, complete system as well. Obviously, the foam, it's a bit old school. It takes some cleaning, but it certainly does the job. There's no denying it does. It's just a pain in the arse when it comes to cleaning.
But I guess it's really good, isn't it?
Do the job.
If you're not outlaying thousands of pounds, then you can put up with cleaning the sponge every now and again. In my opinion, a lot of people are looking to save money. A lot of people are trying to save money at the moment. One of the ways that you can do this is get back in and involved in the hobby and the filters and the cleaning, and don't have it all automated and on the highest. A little bit of elbow grease can save you a lot of money in that sense.
I think a lot of people probably say there's still something quite therapeutic about filter cleaning. Don't ask me what it is. This is one of them weird conversations coming up, but and I know if my dad's watching this, he's going to be laughing, thinking I never lift a bloody finger. Well, that's only circumstantial. It really is. Something about it.
Yeah, I remember when back in the day we had to strip all the systems down when that was just our protocol at the time. Just strip everything down, spray it all down, sterilize the fiberglass tanks. Oh yeah, that would get me going, Rick. I loved it. Nice, clean, shiny.
It's probably because I was brought up on it. There's something about just getting your headphones in and getting stuck in. But just to sort of finish on that question, the email we got from these guys also mentioned at the end about what's the cleaning regime, because as I know, water change is not your preferred choice. I think this is, again, just one of them things I want to delve into a little bit more. Throughout all the conversations and stuff we said, it's not that water changes aren't, I'm against water changes. It's about doing the water changes safely. This is what it's all about, and this is just coming around to this again, Chris, isn't it? I think the thing for me, I had this conversation actually because when Evo was here, we were talking, and he did the video with Fujo at NND in Japan, and Fujo was talking about this 200-meter underground water that they've got in this fish house, that it's unbelievable quality drinking water. And to be fair, if you gave me that, I'd probably flooding it through the pond. I'd get them on it as much as I could because it doesn't get any better. Fact of the matter is, very few of us get that. So it's more about this education and understanding. If we can find a way to put it up somewhere, we might put it up on one of the social media pages. There is a test kit available that I've been getting people, because it's the best solution I've got at the minute. It's £130 for the full-on test. I think you could probably get away with the £100 one, but it's £130 to have this. You can have your pond. It's only for one sample, so pond and tap is the ideal scenario. But if you had to do one, I'd probably go with the mains water straight out. Have it screened for absolutely everything. And if people wanted to do it, if we put the link up, you feel free to have it done and send me the results. Can have a look and analyse them. But it's about knowing what's going on with your water before you do anything. Even just with basic water, if you've got really foul water and you can't purify it properly, you need to be making sure you're not adding too much of it, and you sort of deal with it accordingly. And this test, in my opinion, for the sake of 130 quid, I think it's fair to say it's a disproportionately low cost compared to even the most basic of koi collections. And given what koi costs and all the equipment and everything else associated, as much as all, it might seem like a crazy waste of money. And to be fair, if everything's absolutely fine and you're doing what you're doing, we've said that before, then stick with what you're doing. But if you are uncertain or you're looking to want to maybe water change more or run a trick or whatever it is you're wanting to do, I think it's just important to understand the water that you're dealing with that's coming into your pond, just so you can make sure you're treating it properly.
I mean, I'm quite
hope to add to that.
Yeah, I'm quite nerdy about, it's just the adult. You were saying about the relative cost. I mean, it is fascinating because, who's to say, where's the research that's saying that there aren't tangible connections between poor water quality and repeatedly treating your fish because you can't get
Sorry, I'm gonna have to stop you a minute, Chris, because I was just smirking there because I was just reading through the comments, and I'll let you read that one out.
Yeah.
Terry, absolute legend. Love it.
Yeah. I noticed it says Glazers out there as well. But you weren't singing that when you beat us 3-1.
You can't beat a bit of football banter, magic. If you can get back to it, mate, because they probably knocked you clean off your stride now, thinking about the absolute arse whooping that you boys got. But carry on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Again, I think we were watching a different game, mate. But yeah.
It's only the score that matters, mate.
Yeah. We don't know what the connections are between the other things that go on in the pond. I mean, if we talk about an environment and creating an ecosystem, this butterfly effect. A butterfly flaps his wings in the Amazon, and the saying goes, it creates a tornado somewhere else on the planet. If you take it as a micro ecosystem, all these little intricate changes. And that is the ultimate goal of koi keeping. The best koi keepers have stability, temperature, water quality, volumes of food, everything about it. What they enjoy is stability. That's my number one remit with fish keeping. Change any metric, any area, and it has a knock-on effect. And I think flooding the pond with tap water constantly inhibits your filter. It can't not do, because if you don't know what's in your tap, we know that all heavy metals impact most nitrifying bacteria. We know that. So if you don't know what, even at a microscopic level, we know that. So I think a lot of people don't actually train their filter to their maximum potential, or as soon as they get to that optimal point, it drops down again because they do a massive water change. You almost got to have confidence in the system. I mean, we talk about it, nice, achievable, attainable filter for most people, the Nexus. We bark on about it for years, but we know that when that extra media is added to the biochamber, that takes a lot of knocking to knock it off his stride.
Yeah.
Really mature. Yeah. Now, okay, if you want to improve the clarity, solid removal, blah, 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 that's fine. But as a standalone filter, I just don't think people ever train it to the point where it's rocking and rolling. You know what I mean? It's running at its optimal.
Agreed. And I think that's actually an interesting thing you've said, because we had this conversation, didn't we, as well, about my Nan's watching. Evening, Nan. My number one fan.
I'm your number one fan.
we was on about the thing where we see, because I actually had this from I think Elliot Vigil is one of our followers in America, sort of mentioned this to me about how I'm managing to push the ponds as far as what I do, given they've seen much bigger ponds, much likely stocked having more issues. But the problem is I push it through some pretty scary boundaries that a lot of people won't. I see a lot of people who will, the filter's got to adapt. So you get to X point, X stocking, X feeding, you increase that feeding, ultimately something's going to probably spike somewhere.
Yeah.
Most of the time nitrite. Yeah. But what happens is we're going to get probably at most, you might jump up, and I see this a lot, kind of like 0.25, 0.3-ish, somewhere around that 0.5 of nitrite. This should only be short-lived. Yeah,
hit the panic and massive water change, reduce feed, and then you've got to build it all back up again.
Yeah,
that's it. You
never overstep the boundary.
Yeah, and it is difficult. I don't envy hobbyists. I mean, obviously, how many ponds have we experimented? There's all process behind it and logic with what we do all the time, and the health of the fish are always paramount to us. It'd be mad for us to do things that really jeopardize the fish's health. But yeah, pushing those boundaries and just seeing what's achieved. And I genuinely think that a lot of filters aren't running at their optimum rate. Simple as that. That's my. I don't have any statistics behind that. I never will. There never will be. But I dare say, a lot of ponds are underperforming filter-wise. Not that they're underfiltered. The filter that they have is underperforming.
Yeah,
I'm pretty confident of that.
I think it comes back to us. I mean, it's hard to get information on this stuff, but I think the belief is your nitrite must be absolute zero at all times.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you could lose fish. And I think this is a way. Again, this could be taken the wrong way. So please don't, people. But the ultimate thing is ammonia. I hate. That is an absolute. Ammonia spikes can do so much damage in such a short time. But nitrite's more. It's a much easier parameter to manage, and at the kind of levels we're talking, when you get a spike and it's a relatively short-term one, it can be protected against using salt. So you're protecting against the effects enough that you give enough time for your filter to build up to it and take it away. And I think there should also be, information around what nitrite levels fish will actually tolerate on a permanent basis. Because I think genuinely zero nitrite is almost unattainable in a pond that's got any level of food going into it.
I think it's obviously nitrite poisoning. It's this accumulative effect at the point where the fish are exposed to it, and then you've seen it before, Rick. When fish come back from Japan, you might have nitrite through the roof, but they're swimming around with absolutely no effect whatsoever, feeding.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know anything was wrong with them. And obviously, at that point where they hit that point where it starts to impact oxygen transfer, then you got a problem. So I think it is a real tricky one to word this. Know exactly what you're saying. I just don't know how you pass this info on to thousands of hobbyists that will interpret it differently. Because there's so many transferable different, so many variables that it's hard to have that one rule fits all.
Agreed. And that's where the experience comes in. I did mention this to the time, the missing link is 20 odd years of experience of dealing with thousands of fish and so many ponds. But it's interesting. But that's my sort of take on that, folks. Is that I think we need to push the boundary. If you really want to get a system performing, you've got to push through some of these pain thresholds at times and know that a spike of nitrite, a short little spike of nitrite, is not going to wipe your collection out. That I could say with absolute confidence. Obviously, you don't want elevated levels for long periods of time. That's going to be no good. But ultimately, them short spikes it's a natural occurrence in a system. I even see it, and it's amazing how quickly filters drop off. We can take a pond that's been on heavy food, heavy stocking, take them, basically get the fish out. So we're getting them out ready for sale within 2 or 3 days of that pond. If that pond is stood for 2 or 3 days, I cannot go back to instantly feeding that pond at the same level. Not a chance. I noticed the drop off that fast. If I go straight back in at that exact feed level, that pond suffers badly. So
you have this lagging effect, don't you? You know, if you had 10 fish and the filter is coping with 10 fish, you then take 5 fish out, all that bacteria then doesn't have enough food, so it drops, and then you put some more fish in, and then the filter's got to catch up with it again. So there's the constant lagging effect. That's where it comes down to stability. Ponds that attract, you know, ponds weighing the food, controlling the level of food, not having a ridiculous influx of new stock. You just train it to sort of, and at that point, every filter will hit a ceiling. You know, it's inevitable.
Absolutely.
But I think a lot of people say, like, I had a customer last year. He had two Nexuses on 2,500 gallon pond, both with the extra K1.
Wow.
Yeah, so absolutely, 2 bottom drains, absolutely ample. Water was pretty clear, and just could not sort of get on top of this water quality issue. And it's driving me mad because I was just like, something's not up here. Get back to basics. Yeah, because you know what I'm like. I can't accept that if something's specced well, because typically what happens is they sort of say, well, you sold me a load of rubbish. And it was like, well, okay, fair enough. But let me have a look a bit deeper. And sure enough, pond was being flooded with tap water, which was never really allowed. You know, what is tap water all about? It's designed, you know, what they put in tap water is designed to kill bacteria. We don't get
nasty stuff.
Yeah, that's good and bad, you know. So it can't differentiate between the good and the bad bacteria. Just you know, it's just
on that point, Chris, here's another one. And just while we're at it, folks, remember, please hit share, hit like, and don't forget 25% off back issues on the magazine as well. We'll put the details in the banner below. Take advantage of that until the end of the month. If you've got a few missing from your collection or you've not got any yet, go for it. But just following on from that, question from Rick. I see quite a few more koi keepers using Virkon Aquatic to support bacterial issues in ponds. What's your views on this compared to chloramine tea? This, for me, sort of ties in a little bit with what we're saying, because I have seen it becoming a bit of a trend again, Virkon just being dropped in to a pond. And I'm going to give my very non-scientific thing on this, because I think it's important to understand that obviously every pond, if you've got a bacterial problem going on, that is the time when I would consider using Virkon, and I think Virkon over chloramine tea, because just from what I can gather, chloramine tea is on different levels kind of much more destructive to the good and bad groups of bacteria in a pond. And why I say that and why this is important is because basically in your pond at any given time, you've got the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, but there's only one food source. So you've got the two sort of like this over the food source. And when good is thriving and doing well, it's dominating the food source and it's suppressing the bad. There's only ever sort of like the one group of bacteria dominating in the pond. And if you've got everything going well, that's where you're going to be. If everything's going well, I don't know why you would add something in that can potentially damage that good and potentially shrink it in its capacity to allow the bad, which are, I forget the correct word now, like the predatory bacteria, that will try any opportunistic, that's it, will try and get in there and dominate over that food source. It's basically like the two scales tipping. So if bad is the dominant source, the bad will suppress the good bacteria because it's dominating the food source. It's there, it's thriving. At that point, the job is to try and tip those scales. But the difference here is if this is just some minor issues going on, you can probably do this. If you've got full-blown bacterial infection, at this point, the fish themselves need addressing with antibiotics. And it's important to know whether it's full-blown bacterial or not. I'm not going to go into that side too much, just more on this topic. And this is where, to be honest with you, I've used Virkon this year for this very reason. The Karashigoi pond just went through a weird little phase where I think they were knocking themselves a lot from the heavy stocking and feeding. We were just getting a few red scales that were taking a long time to sort of disappear. And it was concerning me, but I knew it wasn't severe on like it's a full-blown bacterial problem. Something minor, which might have just been a little imbalance in the pond. And what I actually did was I used Virkon quite aggressively. I used it every day for 5 days was my thought process. This is a regime I trialed myself just to see the sort of boundaries with it as well. With the thought being is I need to basically neutralise this and keep knocking down the bad groups, and hopefully good will overwhelm and prevail. And ultimately, to be honest, after that and a couple of weeks with just a once a week dose, got that pond right back on track. But would I use Virkon like some people are in a healthy pond as a so-called preventative? Absolutely not, because I think you can potentially do more harm than good. If you've got the balance and you've got the harmony, don't go interfering with stuff that can damage it and rock it. I'd go nowhere near it myself.
Yeah, I think I don't know of any product that keeps any human or any animal free of disease. If there were, we'd all have it. So it's a great concept. Put this in your pond and you won't get a bacterial problem. And for some people, it might seemingly work, but equally you could not get a bacterial problem without using it. I don't really like the concept of using products for the sake of using it. I think there's more. There's things that you can do as a hobbyist to check your bacterial levels in the pond. I remember a few years ago, you used to be able to buy cultures, for example, just to check the general bacterial load in the pond. Maybe put your mind at ease if it's through the roof. This is literally like a culture spore, like a petri dish, and you just leave it to culture. I think you used to leave it in the airing cupboard or a warm area for 48 hours or so, and it just give you a general, a bit more information than you would have if you didn't do it. And the word of bacteria is a really broad spectrum word. The levels of bacteria, the types, the aggressiveness, how invasive they are. Can they get into the bloodstream quickly? Can they cause secondary primary problems? There's loads to it. So I think a healthy pond that is stocked and the fish are sourced from as safe as possible. We are dealing with livestock. If you never want to lose a fish or get a fish with a raised scale, then koi keeping is not the hobby.
Be the first one to say. I mean, I know there's times I feel like during spring normally. I mean, summer it's been quite relaxed now, but the times during the spring where, especially when there's a lot of new shipments coming in, you've got all 60 ponds up there full. We just get sort of one area, one batch of ponds settled. You turn your back, and something else is on the turn somewhere. And it does feel like constant firefighting. So it's never going to be. But I think the biggest thing here is just being proactive with your maintenance as well, rather than chucking something like a Virkon in. Just be proactive. Don't let waste accumulate. That is one of the biggest things when that stuff. I'll never forget years back, more when I started at my dad's shop with the bay filters, the amount of box filters, the amount of times I would find that as the cause of bacteria problems. It was insane, end bays, people only ever flushing out, or some people actually not knowing to flush where they got the bottom voids in the multi-bays, not knowing that they were there designed to be flushed. And you'd say you get this problem, you sort of work through the system. And even more modern day with bead filters, the traditional beads especially, I'm not a fan at all, because I think they're dangerous in a lot of ways, because you can't truly see what's going on inside there. And they are a fantastic place for waste to just accumulate. And the minute that goes on the turn, you're in trouble. You really are.
I think
so.
With
proactive approach will help.
Yeah, people tend to judge that because they keep the water so clear, that they work on the assumption that it's. But obviously, you still need a regular. If you do, I'm not saying that you need to go and change it if you've got one. But if you are experiencing problems, I think any filter that doesn't retain solids, and detritus can only be viewed as a good thing. I think everyone would probably agree with that.
Yeah. So I think that's a great topic. I always like talking about that one. But yeah, I'm not. It's just one of them things. My old simplistic approach to koi keeping, chucking stuff in for the sake of it, absolutely not really. So let's stay away from that one. Right, let me dive back into questions, mate. See what else we've got. Let's have a look. I saw one here, which is going to be a really simple and easy one to answer. From Richard Ansell, does spraying tap water into a pond bubble off the chlorine? Someone said yes, but all I'm going to say to it is absolutely do not do that at all. We're not just talking chlorine is just one of the issues you're going to be looking at with your tap water. Chlorine, even the more complex chloramines and things these days are going to have absolutely no effect to spraying them. So I feel like it's a bit of an old wives' tale, that one, and I just personally go nowhere near it. You need to be purifying through a purifier or treating the water with a liquid dechlorinator, but absolutely no to that technique. If you think that's sufficient, I think you're going to be doing a lot of damage very quickly. I don't think you've got too much more to add to that, Chris.
No, pretty much. Like you said, one of the problems is chloramine, which does not oxidize so well in comparison to chlorine. So yeah, in a nutshell, don't use that as your only method of dechlorinating water.
Yeah. Here we are. Can you please explain the concept of a blank breeder certificate being available with certain koi? Is it a case of the fish being small when it comes in and the dealer can update the info? Right. This is I'm probably to blame for a lot of this one this year. Right. So this sort of stems. This is a big Dainichi thing with this one now. When you're bidding in the auctions of Dainichi, they sell sometimes boxes of fish. So like this year, I've had Benigoi, Ginrin Benigoi, the Botan, quite a lot. Some of the yellow monkeys, the Ginrin Karashi as well. Now, what they do is provide a blank certificate, because obviously there's no way that it would rocket the value and the price, and there'd just be a near impossibility to achieve. There's no way the breeders are going to photograph individually each of those 50 fish in those boxes, for example. Just not going to happen. I mean, can you imagine trying to photograph 50 Benigois and keep it all separate, process it? The time cost alone would be insane. But what they are concerned about, and this is a big thing with the big brand breeders, is protecting their brand, because there was a phase in China a few years back, good old China up to their usual tricks, where they were home breeding their own koi, but then selling them into the market as it happened with Issa quite a lot, actually. I know he was really concerned. And at Dainichi, they were selling them as those breeders' fish, which is something them guys certainly don't want to be happening. And honestly, around a big group of breeders, this was a mass problem about how they deal with it. And then this is where you saw the more and more breeders all of a sudden were certificating more and more fish as a certificate of authenticity to genuinely show. And this is just sort of Dainichi's thing, because these fish still go for quite a substantial price as well. Yeah, there we go. Chris has got one, look. Because they go for such a substantial price, they want to just prove the origin for the customer, for the dealer buying them, just for the whole chain, that those fish. So you can't get your hands on one of these. You see them Dainichi ones. I mean, they've got that lovely stamp, hologram stamp in the bottom. They're great. So, there's no ripping them off all that easily. And yeah, that's the concept behind it. It's plain and simple. It's just that realistically, it's not going to happen that everyone's photographed, but at least you've got something there to prove your authenticity. Because I mean, let's face it, with a Benigoi, that is a really easy variety to rip off if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But a Benigoi from Dainichi, from some of those particular parent sets, is an incredibly valuable and precious thing, really. So I would want some kind of proof of origin, in all honesty, that, it could even be as simple as dealers in any country saying that they're fish from Dainichi. Well, now with that concept, there's barely any fish that come from them farm without some kind of proof. So it's great that they're doing it, to be honest with you, because it's obviously it's a lot of work still, and yeah, for breeders doing it, Taniguchi is the same. Taniguchi took it on because he had the same problems. He nearly photographs just about every fish and certificates them a lot of the time. So yeah, there's nothing more to it than that. Sometimes you get breeders who are just a bit lazy. I sort of had it with Coda last year, bless him. There was just some Nisai I bought, and there was like, I think about 20, 30 random blank certificates come in the box, which I could have obviously filled in and done just to sort of prove its origin if I wanted to. But yeah, I think with the bigger breeders, it's important because those fish carry such price tags and sort of premiums. I think some proof of origin is needed, really. So that's that one. Right, let's have a look, folks. What else have we got? I've just got no eye up here. Just come off Saki Akari growth onto JPD Shogun until temps really drop, then onto wheat germ and garlic. Will this be okay? Again, yes, it will be okay. Absolutely no problems. I would question in this scenario why you've come off of Saki Akari and gone on to a different brand food altogether. Because it's not just Saki. And personally, like I said, I'd have been dropping onto Saki Balance now at this point. You're still getting all the benefits of Saki Akari, which you now lost because you've changed the diet. And I still think at this temperatures given, if you're on some Saki Balance, you're still going to see some cracking results. It's just going to be a little bit easier on your filters, but you're still going to keep that same, gut health. This is a big thing. I saw someone actually commented a fairly new comment on my video I did when I was doing the price comparison, how to Pond Planet, and I can't remember what the point of it was. Oh, that was it. That you shouldn't, why waste your money feeding this if you're not into show koi? It's not just about this; it's about the health side of things as well. And gut health is phenomenal. I think even in humans and fish and a lot of things, how much gut health actually impacts overall health. And this is something that Saki is phenomenal at, because we forget in all the conversations, I'm talking about the extreme growth and everything that you see. But let's talk about skin, for example, the extreme skin quality and shine you get from the really healthy mucus, I believe can only stem from having a really healthy gut at the heart of it. And we forget that this live bacteria that is impregnated, it's in the Saki Akari food, the Akari germ, the most revolutionary thing done to fish food really, is there and working hard to help keep them fish strong, resilient and healthy. So I'll always plug it. I just see in that scenario what you're doing, there's nothing wrong with it. I would have just probably chose to stick on that. And obviously wheat germs, I'll say it again, I'm not a big wheat germ fan. I think when you're getting into the realms of when you're looking at using wheat germ, you're feeding very, very sparingly anyway at that point. And I'd probably just, my opinion, I'd probably just be using a little bit of Saki Balance, even in the cooler waters, just to keep them ticking over. It's not mega aggressive with the fat levels, which is probably one of the most important things for me. And you're going to be feeding. So, if we're talking sort of sub, 8 degrees, something like that, it's just enough food probably every other day, something like that, just to keep them ticking over. Because you've got to balance your filters at this point as well. Because remember, they're going to be sat dormant. And the last thing you want to do is overwhelm your filters. And that's whether that's wheat germ, grow food, it doesn't matter. The filters are still, half asleep. So be mindful of that. Anything to add, Chris?
Yeah, pretty much echo what you say. Obviously, a bit of a Saki Akari advocate myself as well. I could pretty much tell when I go to a customer's pond, I could tell whether they're feeding Saki Akari or not. And for that,
I can also tell if they're being fed wheat germ or not.
It's insane. Yeah. And
honestly.
What, because of the gut or the condition or the waste?
Yeah, it's just something about the way, even when it's used in warmer water, the way it puts weight on the fish. I've not been convinced by a wheat germ diet yet in the slightest.
But I think the advantage is from using it, if you could justify it, of course. The best products on the market always come with a price tag. But yeah, if you're looking for, in my view, it's an investment, because, people spend a lot of money on their ponds, spend good money on fish. Not saying that the foods that this chap is referring to are no good, but if you're asking for my opinion, it will be okay. Could you make improvements? Then yeah, probably you could. So yeah, without sounding like a politician, Yeah, that would probably be my way of putting it.
You do like the political line, mate, don't you?
I do, mate. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I'm not quite as
Right,
polarising as you, Rich.
You what, buddy?
Not quite as polarising as you.
Nah,
sometimes when I come on these things, I just sort of think, right, who are we going to piss off today? That's how I think your brain works.
I'm not. I've got no time to tolerate bullshit. I'm just
really. Oh yeah, I'm well aware of that, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good fun. Right, here's a good one. This is another hot topic from Craig. With the energy crisis, what temperature can I safely go down to during winter? Last year, I kept my pond at 12. I'm going to go straight in and say your optimum temperature range for me personally would be 8 to 12 degrees. You'll get away at 8. I think you'll still find your fish incredibly active, looking incredibly good, and you've just saved yourself 4 degrees of heating there. I don't think you'll notice that much difference between 8 and 12, even, to be honest. One of the big things I just still cannot get my head around, and this is literally, I can't remember who I was talking to, but I'm sort of like, in winter, if you are applying heat just to keep that nip off, 8 to 12, 12 at being the absolute maximum you go to. And then if you're going any warmer, you go minimum of 18 or above. This bizarre temperature range that people seem to have ingrained in their head, 16. 16 is like this magic number that I hear so many times. People heating the pond to like 16 in winter. I just don't understand it, because everything is in no man's land. Filters aren't quite there still. Fish's immune system's nowhere near optimal. You're creating a hell of a lot of condensation a lot of times under these covers, so it can become a bit of a breeding ground as well, especially if you're not getting the gas off the water properly. Yet parasites and everything can really thrive at them temperatures, because if you think about it, it's sort of like the awkward spring temperatures that we get, where it can be a bit of a nightmare. So yeah, I've no time. It's just a complete waste, in my opinion, to be having sat in that band. So it's either sort of 8 to 12 or 18 plus, and don't waste your time keeping it in between, for me.
Yeah, I think people are terrified to drop below. Again, we know some, some science and some statistics behind things, like about the immune system becoming less active. Keep it in that no man's land, the fish are going to lose a lot of mass as well. That's the thing that I always find when I go and see people's ponds back in the day, like in springtime. What have you been doing to your fish? Oh well, I moved them on to one feed every other day, and the pond's sat at like 15, 16 degrees. Well, they're going to be burning a hell of a lot of energy, because fish don't know any different. It's not as if he's going to go, well, I'm being fed that much, I'm not going to swim around. And I just think people are terrified of going to that sort of cool. I mean, I've seen ponds 8 degrees and the fish are swimming around looking for food.
Yeah. Well, let's take it to the other extreme end of this. We're talking about heating. It's not essential to heat your pond in winter.
Yeah, I've literally just
covering's great, because wind chill and the harsh times can really make it hard. So just covering alone, just to keep that off. Even down to 4 degrees, you'll probably find some level of activity still. That just at that point, if you're hitting that, I'm all this. You're not feeding them. You're really just letting them sort of hibernate, stay still. But the fish do it. I never forget my first couple of exposures to this were absolutely insane. So back in very early days, I mean, we're probably talking 20 years ago now. First time, I think we've got some Japanese koi, probably even before that. Some Japanese koi come straight into the shop, and they'd been imported, and we didn't have any heaters on. So it was spring, water was icy cold. These fish came in, and for a day they looked all right. By day 2, they were just rolled over, absolutely flat out on the sides, sort of no real moving, anything going on. And all I remember my dad kept saying to us, "Don't worry, they'll come round." And sure enough, like a week later, these fish just picked themselves up, and it was incredible what they did. And even then, I mean, that was a big one for me then, that sort of like took a lot of panic away, to see how they could actually recover, because they can still recover from issues and stuff when it's cold. It's just things take a hell of a lot longer, more time than most people will be prepared to be patient with. But the second time, the big time I saw this was when Hirasawa's new greenhouse, the gymnasium, was constructed, and he'd not put any heating on it. This place is that massive, he'd just not put boilers on. And I remember walking up to them big, I mean, there must be 40 foot, maybe 50 foot long, them ponds, full of 70 cm plus fish, and not one fish was upright. And even then, you just, the sheer sight of it, panic hit. I've already got quite a few years under my belt at this point. I'm just like, holy shit, what's going on here? And I was with Fujo at the time. He says, oh, don't worry, there's no heat on. Just as blasé as that. He's got no heating. And they were just chilled about it. Yeah, they weren't trying to feed or do anything like that. They just left them alone. And even when you get one of them days where a bit of sunshine shines through and it's the pond surface, you see them just sort of move and agitate a bit more. But they can take it. You've just, again, got to be smart at times like that and not rock the environment, because that's it. You go try feeding when you're in them low temperatures and you create an ammonia spike. Not only is it going to take a long time for that ammonia spike to pull itself back because the filters are so dormant, it's going to hit the fish 10 times harder. And any damage done to the fish at that point, they're going to take a lot longer to recover because their immune system is not firing properly. And you can see how that can just unravel. It's playing out in slow motion. There's not a lot you can do about it. So it's best to sort of cover over, keep your eye on them, do your bit of maintenance and leave them be.
Yeah, I mean, one of the sort of age-old arguments is you can't use sort of a lot of treatments below sort of 10 degrees. Yeah, I'm not being funny. At what cost? You know what I mean? Like, I'd write, if you did come across an issue and you had a heater, then just I've never found that anyone's lost their whole setup because their pond's been 10 degrees and they've treated with potassium. I'm not saying do it. I'm just saying. But if you've got the option,
the fact of the matter is, if you've got Costia, for example, what are you going to do? Because if you leave the Costia, it's going to eat your collection alive.
Yeah. So, yeah, what do you do? Like, if you're not heated, are you just going to sit there and watch your fish roll over? So these are decisions that people have got to make. And really annoyingly, and quite like me, I have an article on this exact subject, and the savings per degree of heating that you're going to make this year with these new energy prices are staggering. Honestly, mate, they are going to be the difference between. And I wish I had them to hand. I haven't, but it is frightening. For each extra degree that you're trying to heat, it is going to eat up a lot of energy. So this year, more than ever, try it. You're going to save yourself money, and you're probably going to give yourself a lot of confidence as well.
Again, I'm coming from a thing where you've been where we've got breeders. This is the Japanese scene for you. We've got breeders who don't have enough indoor pond space, who once harvested in October take their best tatigoi back to the mud ponds and leave them there for winter. Iced over, snowed over, whatever it is, they leave them there for winter. When it's all thawed out, they go and collect them again in sort of April, May time and bring them back to the fish house. I don't think conditions get much more harsh than a Niigata mountain in wintertime.
You know, I guess you could argue, you know, are there benefits to heating your pond? Yeah, there are, but at what cost? You know what I mean? If people are genuinely asking these questions, you know, do I stay in the hobby or not because I can't heat the pond this year? Well, that's bonkers.
Yeah.
Just don't heat the pond. You know what I mean? It's absolutely mental. You could probably keep most ponds with a decent polycarb cover on at about, even in a harsh winter, 5-6 degrees.
I think so.
Maybe even when like you said, when the sun comes out and those polycarb covers start cooking a little bit. You know, versus spending hundreds of pounds a month heating to not really gain a lot, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Agreed. Very late Phil, by the way, there. Phil Jordan does right at the end. I would love to write a book, to be honest with you. I've been thinking about it. I'm just quite wondering if you saw my calendar, where that's going to get fit in, but maybe one to start working on. I think, folks, I'm loving all the questions. We'll just try and grab a couple more and then finish off with a bit of koi appreciation. It's quite a simple one, but while we're sort of on it, is there any benefit to keeping your Backy showers running in winter? No, I would say, unless you're on the higher ends. If you're going the 18 plus and you're maintaining a bit of growth and all the rest of it, I would leave it running as with everything. But I think for me, these sort of things, because typically if it's an add-on filter to what you've got, I'd have no issues in sort of turning it off or looking to insulate it. To be honest with you, there's no issues with insulating it. But if you are just leaving that running and you're covered, that is going to create a lot of chilling. So it's just going to depend on your scenario really with that one. Let's have a look. Just one more sort of on that. Do you recommend turning your flow rates down during winter if you let the temps go down to 8 degrees? And if so, by how much? Yeah, again, I mean, I wouldn't ever pass you. I think this is probably my case for everything. Once every 2 hours. I think in most ponds, there's not a need to be going to having a flow rate any higher than that. And if you're on that kind of flow rate, I'd just leave it running like that year round. It probably sort of ties in there with me for the Backy shower one previously, where, for example, I'm using the Backies, my shower filters to also increase flow rates to get more turnover in the pond. But I shrink them. I mean, they're flat out 30,000 litre per hour at the minute. During winter on the ponds that aren't on the food, I drop that right down to sort of like 25-30% just to keep them ticking over, because it's not really all that important to have the flow rate when everything needs to sit a bit more dormant. So if that's your mindset, adjust accordingly. But I'd never go below once every 2 hours on your flow rate there. Anything to add, Chris? I'll just have a read through.
I think it's drilled into hobbyists, and I think this is an industry-led thing that flow. More is better. It's interesting. A lot of hobbyists don't actually test for O2 levels. They just go, well, I've got loads of time.
On that. It's a hard one though. It's I think given even the thing that oxygen meter I've got's only been out a couple of times, because every time I wanted to do a war dance on it.
But you can buy, you can buy a liquid test kit to give you a gauge. It's not going to be deadly accurate, but an interesting thing, a lot of ponds, the oxygen levels are dictated by the temperature. You've got a ceiling of oxygen that water can physically hold at different temperature ranges.
Yeah.
And with these variable speed pumps, I do urge a lot of people to check their oxygen levels at different parts of the day. And I think you'd be surprised that by turning the flow rate down on the pump, your oxygen levels aren't going to change that much. So
yeah, agreed. Agreed. Right, last one on questions for tonight. I appreciate everything you've dropped in, folks. Been some good ones there. It's got a bit topical as well on a few things, but any signs of freight charges dropping after the autumn harvest and going into the new year? I always find it interesting when we get these questions, because one, I sort of think the relevance, and this is just my opinion, the relevance of freight charges to you guys as koi keepers is so marginal and fractional, to be honest with you, because when you break it down to the one fish or the handful of fish you possibly buy in every year, you're really not noticing that much difference in what's happening. I've said previously, at the minute, it's also offset by one of the best yen rates we've had in a long time as well, which that sort of counteracts against the air freight rises a little bit. So, but just to answer the question directly, as it stands, no. But it's all going to depend on what happens, because ultimately it's a supply and demand thing with air freight. So most air freight comes in on passenger planes in the cargo hold. And ultimately at the minute, because of tourism numbers being so low in Japan, very few flights are coming in compared to what they normally would be. I think we're talking like one a day with ANA, for example, and JAL and the likes of KLM and other people aren't bringing any in anymore. So Japan has recently relaxed the rules again to try and just boost tourism. And I think possibly by the year end, we're going to see the drop of the current visa system back to the visa waiver scheme. That's my prediction. So at that point, you'll see the tourism levels sort of shoot, and then there'll be more supply, which should hopefully drop charges, although I don't ever think we'll see them return to where they were 3 years ago. It's just not the way things ever work. But with air freight, it is very much supply and demand. So when more supply is back in the market, we should see a drop. But honestly, I don't think you really see too much impact on your fish prices. There's a load of other variables in there that ultimately change it anyway. So yeah, there's always a thing that I say. Yen rates are the best they've been for a long time, and that makes a huge impact. I think the air freight side is for the likes of myself. I've had some absolute stingers this year where we forecasted prices of shipments, and then from shipment to shipment it's changed, and in some it's been in the realms of tens of thousands of pounds that the change has been on a single shipment, and that is a living nightmare. But it's scaled up on a huge level, so when you break that down, it's not really all that much. So I hope that answers the question and gives all you guys a little bit more of an understanding there, because I think Yivo's just tuned in time for awesome Kajaku we're going to look at. So I'm not sure you've ever seen this fish, Chris, to be honest.
I was sort of racking my brains thinking Kajaku.
It's an old one. I've dug into archives for this, but I remember very well this little gem. So I found this, I think it was about 2016, 2017 maybe. I'm rooting around at NND looking for some koi shellfish for the International Junior, I think it was at that point. Yeah. And there's been times that I've had it with a Shiro there, and I had it with this Kajaku, that when they were placed in front of me, it might have actually been the same year. The moment I saw that fish, I knew it was a first prize winner. That was my gut, that it's going to take one hell of a fish to beat that. And I knew it was right up there. And this Shiro at this particular time as well was the same kind of feeling to it. And Kajaku are a crazy one, Chris, aren't they? I think a variety that drives a lot of us insane. Such a technical fish, and there's a reason why there's not many in the market.
Yeah. I wouldn't fancy breeding Kajaku, mate, if I was a breeder.
No, not many in the market, full stop. NND's always had a nice line for him. So it comes from the sort of Marusho part of NND, back when he was independent. Always dabbled with some nice Kajaku, and still does. But I mean, numbers every year, we're talking, handful. Yeah. It's crazy. And ones that come along like this are such few and far between. But yeah, technical issues or sort of technicality of this fish you're looking at there. I'm going to start with body, as ever. It's so important. Kajaku are one of the most prone fish to body issues. They sort of naturally have a dumpy body frame, just like with old school Shiro lineages and bits and bobs. It's a dumpy frame, and NND sort of managed to rectify this a bit, and the one in the game at the minute, Omasako, has completely seemed to have cured that problem. They've done an amazing job on rectifying it, kind of like they did with Shiro, to be honest with you, because up until them sort of coming along and doing what they did to Shiro, it's Kajaku stayed the same. But so this one, looking at it, you can see there structure-wise, superb, nice big head on it. This is incredibly important. You've got to get the bone structure right on Kajaku, or they are just going to end up like rugby balls, and it's such a problem for them. So really cracking head, nice and long, nice width to it, proportional. What I like is the body line as it flows through this fish is just solid. Good width across the shoulders, good width at the peduncle, and then just a nice line carrying through. Yeah. I think Chris, this is where Chris will get the peg fin proportions and everything there, just so nice, so elegant. I just knew it, and then the big one with
Kajaku flows really well, doesn't it?
It does, and the sort of pattern flows and works with it really well too. And a big one people always mutter about with Kajaku is them being clean. that magic word. Now, my God, when you throw that in, I mean, there's so few in the world that truly are clean and stay clean. It's a nightmare. But I think the issue is in Japan, actually, so like getting the sumi and the pec fins, for example, you still see examples winning top awards with sumi and the pec fin, or a little bit of darkening in a few areas, because I think it's appreciated that you've got to go on the overall technicalities. Like when you get a high-level Kajaku with good pattern, good body, and very good Matsubamon on there as well, that in its own is an achievement. To then get bright white shining pecs and a bright white shining head is a nigh on impossibility.
Perfect
Certainly
pattern.
when the size and age involved, it's so unobtainable, isn't it? Paul just saying it there. Look, nice body, but lots of grey on his face. It just happens with this variety, unfortunately. They are rare beasts at this kind of level. So with this one, however, looking at it, I was so confident. Obviously, you'll notice that the Matsubamon is actually sat down in the fish quite a lot still, which I found quite appealing because they are going to naturally darken with age. It was something I was looking for. But even for a koi show, that being sat down, I knew this fish was too good. I mean, if you look at the pattern, I think this is where it really comes into its own. That face pattern is just insane. The sort of half and half, the balance through the body, the multiple steps. We've got Odame, the peduncle. It just ticks so many boxes, being technically good. And I was happy that it obviously is very clean at the minute. And the Matsubamon being sat down told me I didn't think it was likely to darken too much over the next year, especially going into the mud pond. So ultimately, it went into the show. It won a gold prize, did exactly what I wanted it to do and expected it would do. And then it went on into the mud pond for the summer. And I think at this point, this was about 25 cm, somewhere around that. So let's find it. Joe, is the reticulation going to come as the scales and skin stretch? Is the skin hiding the scale at this stage? Matsubamon will come. You can see it sat there. It's just got to darken and push up. That's why, again, we don't want that too much too young. It's just like with the Asagi. Absolutely no different. The darker Asagis, when they're young, are going to end up absolutely trash when they get bigger. You want the lighter ones. So anyway, went in the mud pond, and this was probably one of the simplest results there. We're going to see. So it whacked about 20 odd centimeters on, got up into the mid 40s. But you can see there, it just kind of held the clean nature to it, which blew my mind. It was a male fish as well on here, so cracking body for a male. You can see the structural elements playing out. The size of the head, I think, is even more prominent at this point. And you can see that the Matsubamon is starting to form. So it's all actually stretched out a little bit more at this point. It's become a little bit more prominent. Some areas on the belly you can see starting to darken a little bit. But it's all there waiting to happen. But I love the fact even at this eye, it wasn't too dark. That's exactly how I would want to pick one, knowing what's going to be coming over the next couple of years. So it was a really, really great result. Super fish as well. I mean, I can't remember buying one as good since, to be honest with you, as hard as they are to get. And just to sort of wipe us off a minute, there you can see it side by side. So that's after 6 months in the mud pond. Again, for people who's joined in on the NND mud pond event, a lot of the fish that went in were a similar sort of size to this Kajaku as Tosai. And you can see there what's happened as Nisai, male or female. And this is just another prime example here of why we mutter on about body shape and bone structure. Again, a conversation I've been having a lot this week. With the sort of growth and body development, it's not necessarily a conversation of male or female. It's a conversation of, is the bone structure right? Because if the bone structure's right, male or female, and it's got a decent genetic pool or lineage behind it, it's going to deliver. It's going to deliver on size. It's going to deliver on body. And the same can be said of the opposite of that. Male or female, if the bone structure is shite, you're not going to do nothing. That really is the biggest part of it. And you can see that playing out again here. Just a really, really epic Kajaku, really. And like I say, Chris, a rare beast.
Yeah, very much so.
It'd be nice to get a pond full of them swimming around, wouldn't it?
Yeah, shouldn't be a difficult challenge, man.
My God. But yeah, cracking fish. I just thought I'd bring that on because these really are quite an elusive variety in all reality. And yeah, not one you're not going to see many like that kicking about, to be honest. So there we have it on that one. And yeah, hope you've enjoyed that, folks. Nice to catch up with everybody once again. And please remember, while we've got you all, if you we've got the 25% off on the Koi Talk magazines at the minute on the back issues. So details below on that one. Take advantage of it. It's on until the end of the month if you want to top your collection up. And yeah, just in case you weren't here at the beginning, we're getting a little bit closer with the binders now. It's been an interesting journey so far, as I said. But yeah, we're working on the design, and I think it's fair to say, even if you don't have the magazine, you probably want one of the binders. They are going to look epic. So there we have it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Chris, go and put on my fish to bed, mate, please.
Yeah, I've got a date with the Colonel, guys, so I'll catch you later.
Nice one. I'm glad to see diets improve, mate.
Yeah, protein, mate, protein. It's that KFC germ.
Quality. Yeah, there we go, folks. I'll leave you all to it, and yeah, catch you all next week. Thanks for tuning in, and yeah, we'll be back with more.